Good afternoon. Welcome to Community Church. I'm Pastor Cameron. This is Sermons in 7, the Gospel of Mark. Well, we are continuing our journey today through Mark chapter 6, and we come to the story, we come to the event of the feeding of the 5,000. And so verse 30 here of chapter 6 starts, and it says, "The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught." Well, where is this coming from? Because if you look back in the chapter, you find the story of John the Baptist being beheaded. Well, you have to go back to verse 7 of chapter 6, where Jesus, he summoned the 12 and began to do what? Send them out in pairs and gave them authority over unclean spirits. So Jesus is sending out his disciples for ministry. So the apostles gathered, and that's really the context that we find Mark chapter 6, verse 30, that the apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Right? They're like, hey, this is what's going on. This is awesome, right? And he said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a remote place and rest for a while." For people were coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. You know, there's a philosophy out there. It's like the busier you are, the better. Well, here Jesus says, you know what? There's a time to rest. I think of those scriptures in Ecclesiastes where it talks about there's a time for this and there's a time for that. You know, there's a time where we do need to rest. We do need to rest in the Lord. We need to get away and say, you know, like, man, it's just been a busy month. I just need some time to refuel. But Jesus says, come away, right? So they went away in a boat by themselves to a remote place. But many saw them leaving and recognized them as they ran on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. When he went ashore, he saw a large crowd and had what? And had compassion on them. Because they were like sheep without a shepherd, he began to teach them many things. And so I love this. I love this observation here that they are resting. They are refueling, refitting, having some R&R. And guess what happens? The people, the crowds, the interruptions, right? Have you ever been there? Have you ever been in a place where you're just needing some rest and then guess what? The phone rings, right? Or, you know, the social media dings and notification comes on your phone. You're like, well, I gotta look at this. There are interruptions that come into our life all the time. But what is the response of Jesus here? He says he saw a large crowd and what? He had compassion on them. And so why does he have compassion on them? I love this, right? This is the truth of humanity. He has compassion on them because they were like, how did he see them? He saw them as sheep without a shepherd. There's another passage, I believe it's in Matthew chapter 9, where we have the same terminology that Jesus sees them and has compassion on them. He sees them as what? Distressed, the text says, and dispirited. And he has compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Man, when we get that perspective on people, when we start to see people as Jesus sees them, sometimes we can, I know myself, right? Sometimes we can get frustrated with the interaction or the interruptions. You know, like, man, I just sat down and then the phone rings or the person knocks on the door or the person comes by the office or whatever it is. And we can get frustrated with the interruption. But sometimes a lot of times we just need to see people as Jesus sees them. That brings us compassion because we see people like we are engaged in an eternal war here for the souls of men and women, of boys and girls. And we need to see people and have compassion on them. So he teaches them, right? Then when it grew late, his disciples approached him, said, this place is deserted, it's already late. Send them away. They can go into the surrounding countryside, villages, buy themselves something to eat. So there's a need here. They see an actual legitimate need, okay? But they're like, hey, let's send them away or let's buy money for them, right? Because Jesus says in verse 37, you give them something to eat. So Jesus gives them a command. Hey, give them something to eat. And here's where we see the perspective of the disciples at this time. 1, verse 35 through 36, they were going to send them away, right? Verse 37 and 38, or verse 37, they said to him, should we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give them something to eat? So they're looking at this need with a humanistic wisdom standpoint. How can we do this? What can we do? He asked them, how many loaves do you have? Go and see. They found out. They said 5 and 2 fish, right? Not enough. Let's just be honest. Not enough on a human standpoint. Then he instructed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down, right? There's obedience there. They're like, okay, Rabbi, I'll do what you want me to do. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. He took 5 loaves and 2 fish, looking up to heaven. He blessed and broke the loaves. He kept giving them to the disciples to set before the people. You see what happened here? He's been given meager rations, right? A lunch, if you will. And he does what? The Lord does what? He blessed it and he broke the loaves. He gave thanks for what was provided. And nothing is impossible with the Lord. Nothing that we bring him. You know what the disciples were responsible for? Bringing what they had to Jesus. They weren't responsible for the result. Everyone ate and was satisfied. They picked up 12 baskets full of pieces of bread and fish. Now those who had eaten in loaves were 5,000 men. So obviously you could assume women and children were there. But the application for you and I today is what? Where are our eyes? We see a need. Are our eyes on the humanistic wisdom of the natural things? Or are our eyes on the author and perfecter of the faith, who all he needs, all he desires, all he wants is for you and I to bring him what we have. Lord, this is all I have. You're not responsible for the results. You're responsible for what you bring to the Lord. See you next time.